Good morning. We've obviously got a few no shows, no doubt because of the fog. I don't know. We were expecting, we got more bookings than this certainly, but we'll get started. My name is Nigel Caswell. I'm President of People with Multiple Sclerosis here in Victoria. And before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri, the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathering today. I respect their elders, past, present and future. And now I'd like to introduce our first speaker this morning, Andrew Potter. Andrew is coordinator of the Advocacy program for people with MS, run by MS Australia. And he's going to tell you about what the Advocacy program does and what Andrew in particular does, and a bit about his own journey with MS. Andrew has MS. So I'll hand over to Andrew now, and if you'd like to use that speaker as well as the...
As well as the one on
yeah.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks, Nigel. Good morning, people. It's nice to be here. The weather's pretty good here. I'm from Tasmania, so I'm over here for the weekend. So Victorians always laugh at Tasmanians' weather. So, so I was in Hobart earlier in the week for work, and it was like this in Hobart. But I live on the northern coast of Tasmania. I'll talk about that in a minute. I thought I'd start just with, there's going to be yes, sorry, thank you. I thought I'd start with just telling you a little bit about, or sharing a bit about what I do and my role with MS Australia, and a bit about MS Australia. Then there's a 7-minute film that my wife and I did in relation to our journey and our story with MS over the past little while. So please sing out if you can't hear me. I'm a bit of a talker, so I'll keep to time if I can. And first and foremost, it's really good to be here in Victoria amongst over 6 million people, but to connect with you guys as being part of my MS community. So I'm around a lot of people with MS most days in my world, so it's very nice, and it's a privilege to be here today. So thank you for the invitation. MS Australia is the peak organisation representing people with MS throughout the nation. And the best way of describing it when I'm asked, who do you work for, what do you do, is I say, and it's easy today because you're Victorians, I use the analogy of football. The AFL and Victorian football teams, you've all got lots of teams in Victoria and also interstate, and then you've got the AFL, the governing body. Similarly, MS Australia fits the similar pattern, I suppose, in that all the state MS organisations, MS Plus here, Tasmania, New South Wales and the ACT, then you've got Queensland, South Australia, Northern Territory and WA. MS Australia is like the AFL. We are the peak organisation representing nationally us folk with MS, be it the people with MS or be it researchers, or be it systems for MS. I manage a team, as Nigel said, of national advocates. They're all volunteers from throughout the country, and they're all folk living with MS, and or their most significant person in their life is the person with MS. So it might be a partner, a spouse or a child, or someone who they're very close to in a relationship. The purpose and the intention of what we do is to ensure that the advocates are truly representative of us all, given MS is different for all of us. And how I use them is, and you can probably hear me really well now, how I use them is, the purpose and intention of it is to establish relationships with federal MPs and senators, and we then, when we choose to, or when the time is right, will use those advocates to tell and share the story of what the issues are for us in the MS community at that particular given time, to have some positive persuasion on the government of the day federally. So that's what we do. I'm also involved in a lot of other things to ensure that the lens of us is absolutely top of the pile. We're 33,000 people and our families throughout the country. We're pretty quiet and unassuming, regular folk trying desperately to live regular lives. So I'm trying as best I can nationally to put a focus and have an overlay lens of the fact that we are very important We cost a bucket load of money to the community, but we're equally deserving, given the hidden nature, a lot of the time, of the condition that we live with, that we're represented. So that's one of the challenges I have every day. I'm also linked in with a couple of other organisations, or a number, that I'm involved with, and one of those is the University of Tasmania, where I'm on the Consumer and Community Reference Group for them, to ensure that MS is represented in all the research that the Menzies Institute for Research, which is part of the University of Tasmania, has, again, a positive overlay, and we are equal partners in the research that they participate in relation to us being people with MS and our families. I'm also involved in local government back where I live, and I'm on the Access and Inclusion Working Party for Central Coast Council. I'm also on their, this is a bit weird, but I'm also on their Greening Central Coast Strategy Working Party. The reason I'm there, not because partly because it's an environmental thing to keep the coastal zone going, but also we are developing and have developed adult sensory gardens throughout the community, so that no matter where you go and what your capacity may or may not be, you can access the public gardens within the municipality. Makes common sense, to be honest, but it does for me, but not necessarily sometimes with bureaucracy, but it does now. So we've got some fantastic sensory gardens happening there. One of the things that the National Advocates and MS Australia achieved that's probably been the most substantial thing that we've done. There are two really, I think. First and foremost, the biggest one we've achieved some years back now was when the federal government of the day were looking at the cost of, as they are now, the cost of heating and cooling your home and how much it costs us, that sometimes some of us are disadvantaged financially because given the cost of MS in our life. We managed to lobby the government of the day, and successfully throughout the nation and throughout the respective state governments, there was then rebates for concessions for heating and cooling on your power accounts were implemented. So we are very still excited about the fact that we contributed to that, because it made such a difference, and it's thousands and thousands of dollars nationally that people with MS are the recipients of rebates on your account. So we're very proud of the fact that we actually didn't, it's just us telling a story saying this is unfair, we are disadvantaged fiscally sometimes, but our consumption rate of air conditioning is sometimes higher than the average Joe on the street. So that was a good one. The other one that was interesting back a couple of years ago, if people know about the NDIS, there was a proposal in the government, a different government, that people that were recipients of NDIS were reassessed every 12 months for their eligibility. Well, we said to government at the day, we find that hard to believe, in that why are we being reassessed? There's no cure for MS yet. We're going to live with this until probably we pop off. What is the intention and the purpose of us being reassessed? Who's going to do it? And think about the cost of how much it's going to cost the Australian community for things like this to happen every 12 months. So after much argy-bargy, the government of the day came back and said, after much consideration and revision of our proposal, we've made the fiscal decision that it's in the community's best interest that we don't cost as much money, and we're not going to be doing this. We thought, well, that's what we were telling you, but they put a spin on it, so they took the credit. We congratulated the government of the day, said, well done, thank you very much, and put out positive spin on our social media and all the rest of it, but we take credit for that too. Not publicly, but quietly behind the scenes we go, it worked. Some of our lobbying and some of our strategising, it takes a fair bit of work, and you need to, and we used the National Advocates to lobby their respective MPs or senators, but it just shows sometimes that small, slowly, step by step, can make a positive difference. And that was a biggie for us. When you think of the thousands of people that are on the NDIS, if they're all going to be reassessed every 12 months, what a ridiculous scenario that would have been back in the day. So there's some of the things that I do. One of the other things that I've been involved in I've been on advisory councils. People seem to target me a bit sometimes as a speaker to be on advisory committees or advisory councils, and that's good because I think if I can have a positive influence, I'm happy to share my story. I've had MS for a long time, and what you see is not what you get with me, and the usual, you look so good, all that, but you're not underneath it. But I'm happy to be the voice and to demonstrate where I can, because I've got nothing to hide. To be honest, my body is what it is, my life has been what it's been. So part of what I now have been doing is I've been linked in with the Tasmanian State Government, and I'm an advisor to the Health Department on their Consumer and Community Engagement Council, and we look at assessing the efficiencies of the government health sector, which is interesting when you think about health nationally and the challenges that are there. And for me, after 2 years of being on that council, it's really great to see that the staff, certainly from the region that I'm in Tasmania, are first class. And it's not necessarily the issue that I have or that community has with the staff, but it's the dollars behind it. From a funding perspective, they may be really good, but we might need 10 more of them. We might need more paramedics. We might need more nurses. We might need more neurologists or whatever. So it's interesting to see that the staff and it's encouraging. Staff, in my experience, have been really great. But it's the funding and the system of the health sector that is ultimately our challenge. Anyway, after being there for about 12 months, Jane and I, my wife and I, were invited to participate and contribute to an educational film in relation to people's experience when you are admitted to hospital or when you are going to see someone at hospital, either a nurse or a neurologist or whatever. So they put together a film in relation to that, demonstrating that when you go to hospital, if I'm not well, my speech is slurred, or I can't see, or I'm using a wheelchair, or I can't remember who I am or where I am. So my wife has to do that for me. Now, if I'm going to hospital to have some steroids or whatever, I can't demonstrate that's what my needs are, but Jane can. But the way the system is at the moment, she can't speak on my behalf. After this film that we developed, yes, she can now. She can be my advocate. So we've made a great change in the Tasmanian health system that my next of kin can be my advocate and she can speak on my behalf without any legal argy-bargy having to happen. That's a great change in the health system, and we're very happy with that. That's now gone statewide, and only 2 weeks ago they're now pushing for it, and it's going to be a national plan that's implemented throughout the entire country. So I'm very excited about that because it's made such a difference as far as my nervous anticipation when I'm crook, and I'm crook a lot. When you go to hospital, you think, oh shit, who's going to say what for me? How am I going to, what paperwork do I need? How am I going to have my needs and my requirements demonstrated? Jane can do that for me now, so lucky her. You'll meet her in a minute on the screen. I have to say, when people ask me what I fundamentally do, pretty much I provide that information, and I feel the onus of responsibility to ensure that what's happening in your life and what's happening in all our lives is adequately represented. I'll give you a good example, and it's weird, but it's a ripper. One of the things I'm always involved in is having a contribution to the overlay of plain language for documentation and information. MS Australia put out a budget document ready for the federal budget, just about to be announced next week or the week after. And I was provided that when it was completed. And I thought, oh, I was a bit disappointed. I should have been involved so that I could contribute to an overlay of the plain language influence. Anyway, I shared it with people, including Nigel, and Nigel came back to me and said, it's interesting in that there's no referencing and there's no definitions. And I came back to Nigel and said, yep, that's one of the reasons I'm there. And they missed the boat because they didn't consult with me with the best intention. And it's all right if you know what the AIWN is, or the NDIS is, or the NDIA. If you've all got a dictionary of anagrams or acronyms, well, that's fine. And if you're in the sector, that's fine. But if you're regular folk living regular lives like we all are, it needs to have an overlay so that it's easy to understand and we all get it. Which was interesting that we had that discussion only a week ago. I'm in Hobart this week earlier with all the researchers from the Menzies Centre. We spent 2 days prioritising their research components for the next 12 months, and the biggest thing we had to do was put an overlay of plain language on their research so that everybody in the community understood it. Not just the researchers and not just the new graduate researchers that are being involved, but the community. Because if you don't have links with the community and we don't understand what you're doing, we're not going to connect. So that's one of the biggies that is with me, it's not rocket science what I do, it's purely just having a conversation in whatever format. People say, what do you do, Andrew Potter? I say, I'm a storyteller, I'm a good storyteller. I can talk to Prime Ministers, I can talk to Governor Generals, I can talk to my local member, and I'll come back to one of them in a minute, and then you can see the film. I can talk to my wife, I can talk to my kids, and I can talk to our dog Frankie, and I can tell them all a story, and hopefully I can leave them with a smile and information each time I do, and hopefully that's the gift I can give, to be honest, and pretty much I'm fundamentally here to ensure that we're all treated equally and given adequate opportunity for research and representation to ensure that everyone gets on doing what they're here to do, whether it's research, whether it's politicians or whatever. Interestingly, and this is a corny example to finish on, where I live in Ulverston in Tasmania, it's on the northwest coast, about 2 hours west of Launceston. One of the politicians that most people know in the nation at the moment, Jackie Lambie, happens to live in Ulverston as well. I've been to see her a number of times. I've been to see other people, all spectres of government and parliament. Doesn't matter who you vote for or what you represent, but as I say at MS Australia, we love them all. You can vote for whoever you want, but we'll target them all and we'll achieve what we're setting out to achieve. I saw Jackie Lambie a couple of weeks ago. She was putting up a sign, so I put over and said, "Oh, g'day," and she said, "Oh, you're Andrew Potter." And I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "How's that stuff going with MS?" And I thought, bingo. One, she remembered my name. I don't know this lady. I've met her twice over the last 10 years. She remembered my name, she remembered what I do or what I represent. And I thought, and she, to be honest, if we needed someone to put a hand up to vote for or against in Parliament for something for us, she would do that without any reservation whatsoever. So in my book, bingo, it doesn't matter who she is or what she represents, but if we needed her to be a contributor to a persuasion one way or another, I'll do it. And it's interesting at the moment, from a statewide perspective where I live, we've got a new Liberal government, Liberal minority government, with 2 independents and 3 Jackie Lambie network members. So it's going to be interesting. And already this morning in the press back home, apparently they're fighting. So, which I sort of said a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, it's going to last a year, to be honest, but anyway. So, thank you for listening to me. I hope that's been of some interest. Someone asked me this morning about participating and being a national advocate. We've also got a LEAP program, which is a lived experience expert panel, and they provide information and, again, that translation or that interpretation and contribution of information in some of the documentation, some of the stuff we get together to lobby politicians with. So we're here to ensure that, and the big challenge I feel every day is that I'm representative of 33,000 people, and I'm here to do the best thing I can. And if it takes a good story to send a good message, I'll use you all and your stories positively to do the best I possibly can. Now that's my political spin for you guys this morning now. This is the other side of me, this is the real me, and this is my story. I was an advisor for a pharmaceutical company for a few years, and they wanted to, after some discussion, they said, look, we're putting some films together in their sphere, in the pharmaceutical company sphere, just as a promotional thing, and one of the ones we want to do, it's not that you're a big shiny thing, or an Olympian with MS, or a pop star with MS or whatever. I said, no, I'm a bloke from the bush, but I tell people's stories the best I possibly can. And they said, well, we'd like to tell your story, and this is it. MS has lived with us as a couple. We're only married a year when I was diagnosed, so it's framed our life's journey the last almost 35 years.
But yeah, thinking back, so young, we'd only just bought our house, first house. I don't know that I was devastated or anything like that. I just knew that we would just take everything as it came.
When I was younger, I used to feel a bit ripped off with this is what we've been dealt as a couple. But to be honest now, I am positive about it and reflective in that this is part of my life's journey. It is what it is. So I want to make damn sure that I do the best I can so that what I contribute for our family is the best I possibly can. It's a challenge living with a irreversible neurological condition that's pretty much degenerative. I have challenges with pain every day, diplopia or double vision. I'm exceptionally challenged by virtue of continence of both bowel and bladder. I have thermal regulation challenges. I have sensation loss in various parts of my body and other things like memory retention, so I may well have forgotten a couple of other symptoms. I experience most of that every day. Some days are better than others. If it's really hot, I'm usually more challenged. I then develop a really good relationship with our air conditioning unit to keep me cool. I can't believe I live without aircon now that I have it. My body's healthier for it, which then means that things like my bodily functions are healthier and everything works. Meditation certainly helps with the pain. It does not remove it, but psychologically it helps me deal with the intensity of it, and not to deny it, but just to place it in that space where I'll get through this and it's okay. My exercise regime of a morning before I start work, if I push my body and I rev it up and warm it up, it functions better. And my fatigue level is less. I was diagnosed before there were any medications, so the damage I have on the myelin sheath is there for good. And yeah, I'm on medications now, had been for a long time, but prior to that, the damage for me is irreversible. So this is part of maintaining what I have remaining as far as my capacity. I can do it now. Whereas when I first got on, I was wobbly. For a piece of foam on the floor, it's great. And now I'm dancing. Bathroom breaks are big in my life. I'm a public amenity connoisseur. I know every public amenity from the northwest coast of Tassie to Hobart. If all of a sudden my brain has noticed that something needs to happen, I've got about a minute.
I am very amazed at Andrew's knowledge of where public bathrooms are. Yes, I've probably gotten to know a lot too.
Sometimes I have accidents. Embarrassing, yes, when I was younger. Still embarrassing, yes, now. But it's my normal, I don't know any different. I get over it and move on.
Lovely to see you.
Nice to see you too, mister. I was at a peer support meeting. There were a couple of other blokes there, and one fella suggested maybe us fellas could get together for a coffee or whatever, just for a chat. And I thought, that's a really good idea. And now every month we all get together for lunch. It's a really good place for an hour or a couple of hours for us to jump into, get some recharge, get some information if we need information, have a grizzle if we need to grizzle.
Pretty much anything in conversation comes up except MS. We try to talk about everything from chooks to football. Yeah, it's a good way to move forward.
I know he finds it very challenging because he's exposed to people where the symptoms are worse than what Andrew's are, and I'm sure that he's conscious that that could be me soon. But, as much as it can be confronting for him, I know he really enjoys it as well.
For me, it's really important, living with MS, to ensure that I have life outside of MS. There are things like the old cars and the garden, playing in the dirt, growing things to then give to our family or provide to our family. We have the block of land. I've got the eternal pile of bricks that need to be cleaned. This is our block, Turners Beach. This has been our passion for almost 26 years since we've purchased it. We had the vision of building out here and our kids growing up on the block near the beach. That didn't happen given my health was up the creek a fair bit. But it's our zone of peace and tranquility and ambition.
Yes, we do dream of having a house on the block at Turners Beach, and we will get there. Age 57, we're not there yet.
That's been absolutely part of my mental health and my vision for future, for our family unit, and it keeps me sane, to be honest. Probably the thing that keeps me most grounded is thinking about the impact of my mess on the kids. Yeah. I think it makes me emotional because there have been some compromises in our life. They don't know Dad without MS because I was diagnosed before they were born. I feel guilty. Guilty's a funny phrase. We had aspirational goals for provision of lots of different things for the kids when they were growing up, and that's what makes me emotional about it, in that I suppose the compromise that we had and had to live with.
It hasn't really stopped us from doing anything, but you just modify, I guess, the way you do things. Plan the event, you leave a little bit earlier. Might be multiple bathroom stops on the way or something like that. Yeah, you just adapt, and I guess life just evolved with MS in our world.
Full credit to Jane and to the kids because they've been very accepting of what our journey's been, and I couldn't be more proud or more privileged to have them as my family. My agenda is to ensure that it's not all about me. We're walking and chewing gum together in this space, and I suppose that assists me with ensuring that my psychological approach to life and my place mentally is a positive one, as best I possibly can. There you go. Thank you. Thanks very much. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to take questions. Thanks. No, you can't. Frankie and I are like this. She is cute. We got Frankie when the last child, the second daughter, went to university.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, she's only 8, so she turns 8 in July. So, yeah.
Does that help you, do you think, having sort of like a responsibility and a companion sort of with you? I know
She filled the void when the kids left, to be honest. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
syndrome,
Yeah, and I blame that it was for Jane, really. It was for Jane because she was missing the girls. Yeah, it was for both of us. Yeah.
I think it's good.
Yeah, no, she's lovely. And she knows more about MS than anyone because I growl and grizzle at home because I work from home. So she's part of my support team at home too. So Andrew Giles knows her. So, yes, mate.
How are your kids coping with that?
They are really good. Sorry? Thanks, Nigel. Sorry. How are my kids coping?
Coping, yeah.
Yeah, they don't know any different. So I was diagnosed 35 years ago.
Are you pretty stable, kind of on condition, or just moving up and down?
Moving up and down. I've seen the good side and I've seen the really shitty side.
The worst part.
Yeah. They've been really good. If I ever needed great advocacy support, our youngest daughter, Nicola, would be the one. She works for a politician over here as a speechwriter. She'll be a good one. If I'm not so flash, our other daughter is a forensic scientist, so she'd be good if I'm deceased and she's doing some research or whatever. So I know which one I'd choose to be an advocate for me. Yeah, they've been challenged by it, and as I mentioned in the film, they've missed out on different things. They went to school in a country region, they missed out on stuff because we couldn't afford to do things and so on. So for their university, they had to come, well, didn't have to, but we live in the country. They were better served to study hard, get scholarships to come to Victoria to go to university, so they did. They're my best supporters, to be honest, and they look after their mum too. So it's a challenge when our kids have had things like glandular fever. it puts your head into a bit of a spin, given the Epstein-Barr virus stuff that most of us have been exposed to, and then we get MS and all the rest. And then, you know, you're subjective when it touches your kids. So, but no, they're good value, and they're fit and healthy, and I'm just a dicky dad, so they call me. So, yeah.
I've got a question, Andrew. A lot of the advocacy concerns specific issues.
Yep.
If somebody here had an issue that they wanted the advocates to look at, or how would they go about getting you to do it?
Easy. Look on the MS Australia webpage, or ring MS Connect on the 1-800 number. Say you want to pass it on to Andrew Potter, who works for MS Australia, or just say you want it to go to MS Australia because it's an issue, and they'll flick it through to us. So it's that 1-800 number. It sounds like I'm selling something on telly, but if you ring the number, mention my name, mention MS Australia, and it's an issue that you want to have resolved, they'll find out whether or not it's a federal issue or national issue, whether it's a state issue. If it's a Victorian state government thing, I can't do much, but if it's something that is an Australian government thing, then we can look at it. If it's Centrelink, or if it's tax, or it's transport, or it's aids and appliances, or concessions, I'm across most of that, and we look at that stuff and evaluate that stuff all the time. So driver's licences, for example, they might be state, but there's an overriding body that sets the scene for things like passing your driving test and having, or it might be things like accessible parking permit. I call it my VIP pass. It's the best thing. I've resisted getting one. I've only had one for 2 years, and it's my best friend. Because I'm up and down, up and down, up and down. But yeah, so.
And another question, something which many of you here would be part of, is the NDIS, and the NDIS is undergoing major review. I don't know, can you talk about how the advocates, etc., are involved in the NDIS review?
NDIS review. There's the challenge for us has been that there've been lots of changes to the NDIS since it started, and there's been lots of politicising of it. And one thing that really does my head is that previous governments, and even now, the cost of the NDIS has gone through the roof, and we won't be able to afford it. So we're all going to miss out. That gives us lots of insecurity, to be quite honest, because some of us have waited and worked for a long time for things like the benefits of the NDIS to come to us. If there are issues with the NDIS, the best thing you can do is speak to, if you're involved, you speak to your support coordinator if you're using MS Plus, and if there are issues there, again, just refer it on to us at MS Australia. Use your support coordinator through the MS Plus number, MS Connect number, and they'll push it through to us. I would, if it were an issue like the one I talked about in the first part of my address, when we were going to be reassessed every 12 months on our eligibility, we would look at that nationally, and I would then spring into action with all the national advocates. I'd use the LEAP people as well that are there for similar stuff, but with an overlay of difference in that they're more documentation assessment stuff. And we then lobby the federal government through MPs and senators for that change. So it's not rocket science. Just if you've got an issue, bring it up with your support coordinator if you're using MS Plus as your support coordination for your plan. If you're not, doesn't matter, still ring MS Connect. Say you've asked or request or demand that you want to have something passed on to the advocacy team at MS Australia. Mention my name. Happy for you to mention my name as much as you want, because it'll get to me eventually, because we've got a process as far as bureaucracy goes. But just, if you've got something, make a song and dance about it, and just don't hang up until we say, look, just give me his number or give me his email, and if they won't do anything, they'll flick it to me anyway, so I'll get it. If it's a really big issue and you don't do any good with MS Connect, if you look on the web page for MS Australia, there is a 1-800 number, and you can leave a message there and it will get to me. It might take a bit longer to get to me because, as you'd appreciate, we get lots of people leaving messages, and we're only a small team, but leave a message and it'll get to me within a few days, and then I'll come back to you. So there's a way around it, no matter what the issue might be, whether it's you've got a parking issue here or where you live, or whether it's something to do with Centrelink or tax or aids and appliances or your wheelchair or NDIS or whatever. That's my world. So if you need any assistance or advice, then yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. Any other questions? In which case I'll ask you to join with me in thanking Andrew for his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.